Hello, everyone, and welcome to this very special presentation. My name is Lori. I'm with Nick Software, and with me today I have Brenda with X-Rite and our very special guest, Roberto Valenzuela, who is a wonderful wedding and portrait photographer. Let me do a real brief introduction to Roberto, and then I'm going to pass it over to Brenda. She can talk to you a little bit about X-Rite. Roberto is, like I said, a really prolific and amazing wedding and portrait photographer. He just came out with a book recently called Picture Perfect Practice Book, and it's one of the highest rated books in the country right now. He was also on the featured cover of Rangefinder magazine in May of 2012. And Roberto goes around the country. He's a platform speaker. He does judging around the world. His images are just amazing. I got the privilege of seeing some of his images a few weeks ago and just was amazed. And I'm surprised I haven't heard of you earlier, Roberto. So I'm just really, really thrilled to have you with us. And I'm going to go ahead and let Brenda take a few moments to talk as well. At the very end of the presentation, if you have any questions, we'll be sending a few questions Roberto's way. So Brenda, welcome, and I'll let you go ahead and take it from here.
Thanks, Laurie. And first, let me say thank you to Nick Software for co-sponsoring this webinar. We are always delighted to do these co-sponsored webinars with Nick. It's been a great working relationship, and we really enjoy it at X-Rite. And of course, we want to thank Roberto. Roberto's is a good friend. I met Roberto several years ago at WPPI when he was a platform speaker, and we've remained friends. I've visited him out in Beverly Hills and had a nice lunch together, and always enjoy seeing Roberto and hearing him present at shows. So I'm very excited about this webinar today and very grateful to him that he could make time to do this with us. So without further ado, we will turn it over to my good friend Roberto Valenzuela, and he will take it away. Thank you, Roberto.
No problem. Thank you, Brenda. Thank you, Lori. First of all, thank you to X-Rite for inviting me. I've been using your products for years, and I couldn't live without them. And thank you so much to Nick Filters, which I have also used your filters since the beginning of my career. And I have a very signature feel for my photographs, and they all use Nick Filters to accomplish that. And I also want to thank everybody that's listening out there all over the country, if not in other countries. Thank you so much for coming and joining us. And I hope you get a lot out of it. Definitely write down questions, and you can ask them and write them down on the webinar here, and we can take some questions at the end. I want to go ahead and start with how I use my entire workflow, which I don't really discuss much. So this is kind of unique for me. When it comes to my photography, I'm pretty technical. I'm a pretty technical person, and I do like to have a clean workflow that I do use consistently, so my weddings have a consistent look throughout. So whether I'm shooting in LA or in England or in Germany or whatever, cloudy, sunny, my photos are consistent because that's what my clients are looking for. So because of that, I do depend heavily on X-Rite products. Like X-Rite Color Checker Passport is what I use pretty much religiously at my weddings, just to kind of get that consistent color tone that I'm looking for my photography. So that's the first step that I do after while I'm shooting a wedding. I can show you an example here. You see this. You can see how I just quickly have my brides hold it for a quick second. This is the Color Checker Passport, and these here are the cooling and warming patches, which is what I use the most. These guys right here, and I'll show you those in a bit when I open them up. But it takes 1 second just to take a quick picture of it. It doesn't even have to be in focus. You can just take a photo, include it in that lighting condition. So if I'm going to be shooting a series of photos in this lighting condition, I just quickly take a picture of the passport, and I know that I'm going to have consistent color throughout. You can, of course, do it through moving sliders back and forth in Lightroom or in Photoshop, but I don't have time for that, so I just do it this way, and it synchronizes everything perfectly for me. Let's see. Let me give you guys an example of what the difference that makes. So I will open up, for example, these three images here. Here's another. This is a headshot for an actress. Quickly hold it, take a picture, and move on. And then I can just move on with my work. I will open these three up to show you. I'm going to do it in Adobe Camera Raw, just to kind of give you a quick example. of how this works. So one thing a lot of photographers don't realize is that when you're using auto white balance and you're using window light in a hotel room, the cameras are probably going to go more towards more of a cooler color tone. So, and you may not realize it until you see the difference that the color checker passport will do. I don't know about you guys, but most brides don't want to look blue or coldish in their albums. It's better to go for a warmer tone, which is why I love these portrait cooling and warming patches, which I like to use so I can keep it consistent. Let me show you what I mean here. This is Adobe Camera Raw. So here I am. This is on auto white balance. Take a look at the photo. Looks pretty clean. However, it is a little in the blue tone. If I use the white balance tool right here on Camera Raw, all I simply do is go to one of these patches. Now, I know my work, and I usually stay around the first 3, depending. I'm going to go ahead and click on the first one, and look what the difference that makes. So that's correct color tone. Now, if you can keep clicking on these guys, and you can see how it just gets a little bit warmer each time. But I'm going to stick with the first one, which makes my photo look a lot prettier. Especially when you synchronize this photo with it. Take a look at, let me show you this photo. You can see how blue, you can really see how blue that is now. So when I'm working with my Nik filters, I need to have a good starting point. And that good starting point is a good color consistency throughout my images. So this is cold, this is warm. The filters that I'm going to use for Nik are going to behave very differently if I apply them to these 2 images. So I need to keep those consistent. So when I do an action in Photoshop using Nik filters, I know that it's going to look, I know what look I'm going to achieve. Okay, let me see. I don't know if you can see my color temperature here. Look at the difference it made when I have it as shot. Look how, now you can see how cold it is. 6,050 Kelvin, and then I have an 18 on this green magenta slider. Now I look at the custom, which is what I created with the passport. It jumped to 9,800 to 37, and it gives me beautiful warm skin tones. Now let's synchronize it with this one. I just push Shift to select these 2, synchronize, and I'm going to synchronize the white balance. Now you can see that looks warm and beautiful. Of course, it's a little bit underexposing the skin, but I can fix that later. But now I have consistent skin tones with these 2 photographs. Now let's do this one, 9,800. That one, oops, just slide it there a little bit, 9,800. There you go. Now, the color passport gave me these 3 color tones perfectly synchronized. So that's what I do. Of course, you also have to calibrate your monitor, and I use the Color Monkey photo. You can also use the Color Monkey display, which focuses only on display and projectors, but the Color Monkey photo does display, projectors, and printers. If you need to do color patches and so forth to synchronize your printer with your screen, the Color Monkey photo will do. And then you can have a nice output with your printer as well. Okay, so now that I have consistent colors, now I can go ahead and jump into Nik filters and go through that. So let me go ahead and get rid of this. I'm gonna cancel these guys. So you can see, I just wanted to show people how blue auto white balance looks with window light. I think that makes a big difference. So hope that helps out a little bit. Okay, now let's go ahead and, I just came back from a wedding, so let's just jump into it. This is the way I would manage my workflow with Nik filters and Photoshop. So I'll go ahead and open this up. The first thing I want to show you guys is this little line right here at the bottom of the screen. If you click on this little blue, it's like a little hyperlink, behaves like a website. I just want to make sure that because my camera is on Adobe RGB color space, I need to make sure that my working color space matches my camera's color space. So by clicking on that guy right there at the bottom, you can see your workflow options, and I do have, as you can see, Adobe RGB selected instead of just sRGB or one of these other ones. Of course, ProPhoto is the largest color space, but I stick with Adobe. If I'm going to be printing these on my printer, I do go ahead and switch this to 16 bits per channel, or 8, if I'm just going to be working on a computer here. And I actually do give it a bit of a sharpening for printing, and I usually use matte. So I do give it a matte sharpening. So I'm going to just ignore that right now, but I do use that. Okay, so just wanted to quickly go through that. Okay, here's a typical photo taken in auto white balance on a cloudy day. The photo's fine, but in my style, I like to give it a special look. I don't want my clients to see their photos in their album and just they look normal, like the way their point and shoots look. It's just higher resolution. I do have to give my photos a feel that they love when they come and meet with me. So what I'll go ahead and do is open this guy up in Photoshop. And I'm going to start out with a simple one here. Nik Filters added the Color Efex Pro 4, specifically the 4, added some beautiful film effects, which is I'm a big fan, and I use them in almost every photo I give to my clients. These are called Film Efex Modern, Film Efex Nostalgic, and the Film Efex Vintage. I stick with Nostalgic and Vintage quite a bit. And you can see the yellow stars on the left-hand side. They're highlighted because they're part of my recipes. They're part of my favorites. So you can always just click. If you use this a lot, you can just click on, like, let's say, Color Styler, and you can see the yellow star comes up. And then you can just click on that exact filter on your favorites folder. You don't have to jump into this and then click on the Color Styler. So that's the yellow favorites highlighted. So this photo, I'm going to go ahead and give it a nostalgic look to it. But everything with me has to be elegant and subtle. I don't want it to be too crazy or it just looks too photoshopped. So here's what I do. I'm going to go ahead and click on nostalgic. And you get these crazy colors, right? But you can adjust everything. So as you can see here, you can adjust the brightness, the glow, the vintage. The perceptual saturation is a big one. I do play with that a lot. But let me just show you the film types that I like to use. So you can just run through all these and see what a difference it makes. Now, the beauty of Nik Filters is being able to control the effect and really fine-tune it to your desires. So I like number 12. I use number 12 a lot because it gives me, well, it gives me a film look, which is the whole point. So I'm going to leave it at 12. Then the skin tones now look a little tomato red. So I'm going to tone that down a bit. And I'm going to tone down just the entire filter. Now the way to do that, the best way to do that is if you click on this control point arrow. See the little arrow right there? Click on that little guy. And then you can tone down the filter strength. So here's 0, just the way you started. And then here's 100%. I'm going to go ahead and go to 50. I want it to have a nice look. I want it to look special, but I don't want it to look too photoshopped. Just like that looks gorgeous. Now the skin tones, right there looks good to me. I'm liking it, but I'm going to make it just a little more vintagey. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to add a recipe. So a recipe is when you combine 2 or 3 or 4 different filters into the same photo without leaving the Color Efex Pro interface. So you can do it all right there. So I'm going to do that, you can either click on Add a Filter, which is right here. You can add a filter, and it will just add it on top of what you already have. Or you can do it the cool way, which is push the Shift key and click on one of the filters on your left-hand side here of your list. So I'm going to click on the paper toner, which is so here we go, paper toner. So I'm going to shift click and then click on this paper toner, and you can see here now it added, you can see the drop down arrows, it added the paper toner to the Film Efex Nostalgic. Of course, you can click on these little arrows and see what your photo looks like without the filters. You can add just one, or you can visualize both. So it has a lot of control to inspire you visually, I guess, or give you ideas. Now, in paper toner, you have these browns and you have these blues. I like to stick with number 6. You can see number 1 and number 6 are similar, but number 6 is just a little bit more black and white feel, and number 1 has a little bit more of a bent of a sepia look. And of course, I'm not going to go with the blues for this particular photo. So I'm going to stick with what I do, which is number 6. And now I'm going to, again, I want to be able to show through the film effects filter on top. So I'm going to click on the control points arrow, the drop-down arrow, and I'm going to go ahead and tone down the opacity a little bit. And I'm going to tone it down to 30%. Okay, that's it. Now I can see what it looks like here. I have all these little windows that I can see a preview of what I just did. So this is the single image view, which you can see it takes over my whole screen pretty much. Or you can do the split view, and now this is kind of fun. You can just really see what you did by sliding this target, this little line, and then also you can do the split screen. You can see what that looks like, or you can swap this so you can see it side by side by clicking on that little double arrow button. Okay, there's a big difference between those two. This is the way my images would go in my wedding albums. This is the way I took the photo. This is straight out of the camera. Okay, so now I'm gonna go ahead and click on OK. And here we go. I'm going to click on the F key so you can really see it. Look how beautiful that looks. So that's my nostalgic film effect filter, which is one of my favorites. And what I do is I actually create an action in Photoshop and I run all my photos through the same filter. So if I'm going to have 30 photos of this exact location, I create an action and I do this exact setup. And it gives me this, I can just walk out and come back and it's all there for me, okay? So anyway, that's one good use of those new film effects with Nik Filter's Color Efex Pro 4. I want to go ahead and cancel this. Actually, let me just show you real quick before and after. Here's before. I'm gonna wait a few seconds for people's screens to catch up, and here's the after effect. You can see that the tomato red skins have been toned down. It looks realistic. The shadows and the highlights are beautifully accented there. They look good. They're not clipped or anything. And the sky has been toned down a little bit. It's not pure white anymore. So that's really nice. It's easier on the eyes. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and cancel this and go to the next photo because there's lots of goodies. We want to get through them. I just want to mention something. On this little Nik Filters bar here that we get, you can see that I have the filters that I like that are my favorites are already here. So if you click on this guy, it's going to open up the entire interface and you can choose. Or you can just jump right into one of your favorites here, which is, you do that by clicking on that little yellow star, which is what we talked about. Okay, so I'm going to show you now how I go about doing a single portrait of where there's a lot of skin and you need to really beautify someone. Not that she's not beautiful, she obviously is beautiful, but this is the way I do a portrait instead of multiple people. So again, I don't have to check this again because it remembered my settings. It's already at Adobe RGB and it's already going to apply sharpening for the screen. Unless I'm going to be printing it, then I go to matte for printing instead of the screen option. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel that. I'm quickly going to show you something that I do. Because of the white dress, I do add a little bit of recovery, maybe just 10, maybe just 15. Let's just go to 15, just to kind of, that recovers the highlights just enough so they're not blown out. However, if you do too much, the skin becomes a little pinkish and it looks a little weird. So I'm going to keep it at 10, 15, something like this. Also, the blacks in her hair, I don't want to lose any hair here, any hair detail. As you can see on the black slider, you could really clip the blacks and you don't want to do that. So, but you do want to keep some of that contrast. So I'm going to give it 3. Okay, that 3 is going to open up the shadows a little bit. You can also do fill light to add some light to the shadows, but if you do too much, they look like they're old ladies, so you don't want to do that either. Okay, I'm going to keep it at 3, and the rest is fine. I'm going to click on Open Image. And here we go. Now, I don't know if you can see on your screens, and I don't know how your screens are calibrated, but this picture may look good to the naked eye, but to me, it's lacking like punch. And to add punch, I go to my Nik filters here. And the first thing I'm going to do is go to a filter called the contrast color range, which is right here, contrast color range. I'm going to click on that guy and just quickly look at the comparison between the two. Look at that punch that it gives it. Okay. Now, obviously, it clipped the blacks, and we didn't want to do that in the first place. But it does give the eyes and the lips and those kinds of facial details they just pop right out, and that's what I was looking for. So now, because it clipped the blacks, I'm going to go ahead and apply control points. Control points are little devices you can just plug right into the image. You can just click on one of these guys, put it right where you want it, and it will either add the effect or remove the effect from that particular point of the image. So if you click on the plus one, it's going to basically add the filter to that section. I'll show you real quick. I'm going to click on this. I'm going to just click on it right there. So now the filter's applied only to the hair, and it erases the filter throughout the entire section of the image. Or, actually, let me see if I can show you the mask. Okay. You can see how it's being applied only here, wherever this little circle is, so you can make it larger or smaller. And you can see how it was removed from the entire image except for where the control point is. So that's kind of nice to be able to visually see where the effect is being applied and where it's not. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and erase this point. Just going to click on it, and then I'm going to push the delete key. What I was really after is the add a control point with 0% opacity. I want to remove the effect. So I'm going to remove the effect from the hair so I can bring that hair detail back. Now, of course, I applied it here. I don't want to apply it on her skin tone. So I'm going to grab this little slider and I'm going to move it down to just be applied in the hair. And again, just to double check that I'm not touching her skin, I'm going to click on that little control points arrow, drop down arrow, where you can change the opacity. And I'm going to click on this little mask right here. And you can see that I'm pretty good. Maybe I can actually increase it a little bit so I can get more of the hair. Too much right there. Now, I need another control point for the other parts of the hair. So what I do is I'm going to push the Alt key. I'm going to hold down the Alt key. I'm going to click on this little guy. And I'm going to duplicate that control point to add to other parts of her hair. And because I have the mask, I can really see where I'm deleting the effect here. Obviously, black is you're deleting, and white you can see through. So I'm gonna add it here. Now I don't want to get rid of her. You can see how this one is touching the ear. So I'm going to actually make it even smaller just to add that piece of the hair. Then I'm gonna click on the Option key again, or the Alt key, and I'm gonna do one more to this side of the hair. Okay. Let's see. I like the way that looks. So now I'm going to go rid of the mask. And you can see how the punch is there. See, like before, after, before, after. But the hair is left alone, which is what we want. Okay. Let's see here. I'm going to go ahead and the next one I'm going to do is, because this is a portrait of a lady, my beautiful bride from Russia, I'm going to add dynamic skin softening, which is probably one of the most popular filters ever for photographers. So again, I'm going to add. So I'm going to add to the recipe by clicking the Shift key, and I'm going to go to dynamic skin softener. So now there it is. You can see the two color range, contrast color range, and the dynamic skin softener. Okay. Now, this is one of my favorites ever because it just does a beautiful job at softening the skin without touching other parts of the image. Now, what I want to show you here is a little color palette, little color sampler here. I'm going to click on a midtone on the skin to tell Nik filters. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? Forget that. I'm going to click on the hair. But first, I'm going to push the space key to zoom in to show you what I mean. If you push the space key, it will zoom in. Okay, I'm gonna go to the color sampler here, and I'm gonna click on the hair, and you will see how the hair got softened, but not the skin tones. Of course, the eyelashes did because it's close to the hair color. But you can see the skin tones haven't really been affected by this at all, which is quite nice. Okay, so of course you can change how much color the Nik Filter interface is going to, the Nik Filter program is going to reach. So right now I have it at 25%. If I extend this to like 70%, it's going to expand the darks. So whatever was around this color is going to expand to the nearest neighbors, to 70, 80% of those neighbors. So obviously you can see how now we're affecting the eyeball a little bit too much. All right. Obviously we're not going to do it on the hair. I just wanted to show you how accurate the Nik Filter skin softening is. Okay, I'm going to keep this at 25. I'm going to click the sampler, and I'm not going to click on a highlight. I'm not going to click on a shadow for skin. I'm going to kind of go for the middle range here. So I'm going to click maybe just a tad on the brighter side of the midtones. So I'm going to click there. Now you can see how the skin just got softened, but not the hair, which is what we want. So I'm going to click the space key again. Okay, so now that's what that looks like. Now, obviously, I want to make sure that this is not reaching the eyeballs at all. So I'm going to subtract the effect from the eyes. Now, again, I'm going to make sure I'm doing this right by going to the control points drop-down menu and clicking on the mask. Now I can push the option key on the Mac. I'm going to bring down the range of what I'm going to be reaching here. And I'm going to push the option key, and I'm going to click on this button, and I'm going to multiply it to the eyebrows. And then I'm going to tone it down because I just want that piece of the eyebrow done. Now I'm going to click on the Alt key again, or the option key, and I'm going to just add a bunch of these. Just going to add a bunch of these to get rid of any softening on the eyebrows. I'm going to add the Alt key again. I'm going to go to this eyeball now. I don't want to reach the skin, so I'm going to tone this down. And then I'm going to go to these guys. I'm going to tone down the diameter of the circle here. And then I'm going to do something like that. And of course, I don't want it on the lips either. So I'm going to borrow this guy, and I'm going to put it on the lips. Okay, looks kind of freaky. Let's get rid of the mask so we don't look scary here. I'm going to push the space key to let it render down to the bottom again. There you go. And now I believe this is a little too much softening. It looks a little bit like I photoshopped it. So again, I'm going to tone it down to about 60%. So it looks more photorealistic. There you go. Nobody has wax skin, right? So now I'm going to click OK. Let that render. Okay, look at the difference this makes. Let me just go to full screen here. Okay, check this out. And now check out, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Look how beautiful she looks now. Now watch this. Look at the difference it makes. See, that's using the combination of the contrast color range and then adding the skin softening to it. So that's quite the difference. And this is what my clients get in their wedding albums. So that looks pretty beautiful. I like that very much. So let's go ahead and get out of this and move on to another use of Nik filters, which is when I tone down any kind of greenery. Okay, I'm just gonna click on this guy here. Okay, if you're shooting a portrait or a wedding and you're in a park situation where there's a lot of foliage, a lot of green, a lot of plants, grass, any of the above, I have a certain combination of Nik filters that I use to tone them down. Remember, anything that's red, green, or blue is going to demand your attention from your eye. which is going to basically take away from your couples, which are not red, green, and blue. So in order to take away some of that attention from the foliage, I'm going to tone it down, and I'm going to use one of my other lifesavers in Ink filters called Old Photo. Let me show you how I do that. Real quickly, I'm going to add dynamic skin softening to this image, which I do to pretty much most photos that contain bride and groom portraits. I wouldn't do that with reception photos, of course. But because this is a bride and groom portrait, I will do this quickly. So I'm gonna go to the midtones. I will add a few control points really fast, just to make sure that this is not touching their skin. I'm gonna push the Option key to add it to the hair, just like I showed you before, real fast. This is how fast this is. You can do a lot of cool shortcuts. Beautiful. Okay, I'm done. That's it. I don't have to click OK. What I'll do is I'll add my Old Photo filter. So I'm going to push the Shift key to add it to the recipe. And where is my little Old Photo here? Let's see. Right there. So actually, I'm going to start this guy because I use it a lot. That puts it on my favorites folder. That way I don't have to look for it anymore. Okay, I'm going to push the Shift key, and I'm going to click Old Photo. And now you get this craziness, which may look crazy, but wait till we're finished with it. Now, very fast, number one is a little crazy for me. I usually stick to number 3. Okay, but you can have all these different looks if you choose to. Okay, of course, you have to tone it down clearly, but I'm going to go to number 3 because what I want is number 3 really tones down, obviously makes the foliage look sepia. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the grain that this adds. Because it's an Old Photo look, it's going to add 50% grain by default. Now, I don't want all this grain, so I'm going to tone it down. And I do like just a tad of grain, so when you print it, it looks more realistic. And I'm going to keep it at 5% of grain, and I'm going to leave brightness alone. Actually, yeah, it's at 37. That's fine. Okay. And I'm going to click on the control points down arrow, drop down arrow. And I'm going to tone this down to 25% so I can bring the colors back. Okay, let's see here. That's it, 25%. So now I'm going to go ahead and remove the Old Photo just to show you the difference. Look at how green that foliage looks. It's very distracting. And now look how that's toned down, and more of your eye can be drawn to the bride and groom. Okay, next I'm going to add another filter called Indian Summer. Whenever I have foliage, park, greenery, trees, any of the above, I use Indian Summer. So I'm going to click the Shift key to add it to the recipe. And now you can see what I have in my list. I have Dynamic Skin Softener, I have Old Photo, and I have Indian Summer. Okay, with Indian Summer, this looks a little fake, so I don't want it to look like it's autumn. You know, it's not. So I'm going to click on the different options. This is obviously more red. I want to go to number 3, which is the one I like. It looks more realistic, but it needs to be controlled. It needs to be toned down. So again, click on the control points, and I'm going to tone down the opacity to 25%. There you go. Let me just quickly show you the before and afters here. Compare the original image to the final one. Again, I'll make sure that people's internet connections can see this. This is the original image. Way too distracting on the color there, and I'll take a look at how beautiful that is. So that's why I love these filters so much. I mean, it's just fantastic, and the fact that you can create an action with them. It's just great. So I'll go ahead and click OK. One thing you might want to do once this Old Photo filter is applied, because it gives the photo a very vintagey feel to it, you might want to add a control layer here, one of these layers, and I do click on hue and saturation. But of course, I don't want to bring the saturation back to the trees. I just want it on the reds, the skin tones. So I go to this hue and saturation master, and I go and I click to only select the red channel. So it's only going to affect the red tones in my image. And then I grab the saturation slider, and I'm going to just tone it up to about 20%. So it gives the couple a little bit of color back. So you can obviously see where it's being affected. So I'm going to do it just a tad on the couple. There you go, 25%. And that's it. That would be my final image. Okay. Any questions so far, Lori or Brenda, from anybody?
Yeah, actually, we do have a few. Did you want to take one question right now?
I'll take one real quick.
Okay,
Yeah,
sure. So Edwin was asking your workflow. Do you work strictly in Photoshop, or do you also work in Lightroom?
That's a great question. I work strictly on Photoshop. The only reason why I use Lightroom is to select my photos and categorize the different parts of the wedding or the portraits or whatever I'm doing. And once it's categorized, then I just work in Adobe Camera Raw and in Adobe Photoshop with using Nik filters. Clearly, you can use Nik filters on Lightroom, but I just like having the control in Photoshop. Like I just showed you, I did old photo, but then I had to add a saturation filter to just the red channel. And even though you can do that on Lightroom too, I just like to have the control in Photoshop right there. Okay. All right, let's go to the next one. This one's going to be a little complicated because this one takes kind of a lot. There's a lot happening here. Let me explain why. Whenever I have an image with a bride and groom and I have a lot of structure, our structures, it gets a little advanced on the Nik filter. So let me see if we can get through this guy. Let me see here. All right, we'll start with the image as it was taken right off my camera. Okay, by the way, for those of you who want to know, there is a fill flash applied to this. It's a very subtle fill flash. I usually use my flash on manual, and I just give it a touch of light to the bride and groom, just to kind of separate them a little bit. Okay, so remember, if there's structure or things that have a lot of detail in them, like the bricks of the Brooklyn Bridge, I don't want to make them distracting, but I kind of want to show them a little bit. So what I'll do is I'll click on my Color Efex Pro, and I'm going to dive right in. So this is combining bride and groom with structure. So again, no questions asked already. Dynamic skin softener, first thing I do, click on that. Then I'm going to make sure, I'm going to actually decrease the amount of colors this will reach. I don't want it to blur any other parts of the image. I will add my control points again. I'm going to copy them just real fast. And I'm going to, of course, I need to, oops, I should have done this when I copied them. So there you go. There we go. Okay. I'm going to apply them in the hair. We don't want to blur the hair. And I'm going to apply them in the eyes. And I'm going to make the circle a little bit smaller for this one. And the lips. Okay. Actually, maybe the ear too. Okay. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to leave this alone. I'm not going to click OK. I'm just going to leave it alone. I'm going to check quickly my mask, and that looks pretty good. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and go to contrast only. I want to increase the contrast and the structure of the bridge. So I'm going to click on contrast only. I'm going to push the Shift key to add it to the recipe. And you can clearly see it adds a little bit of a punch to it. Okay, now I'm going to click on the control points. I'm going to tone this down to about 50%. That's all I want here. Very nice. Just to keep it realistic. Okay. Next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go to the vintage, one of the new vintage film effects here. So I'm going to click on vintage. I'm going to push the Shift key. And this adds a bit of a vignette, which I don't want to have, but you can control that here. So what I'll do is I'm gonna, again, you have all of these options you can do, but I'm gonna go to my favorite one, which is number 25. Now, you see this vignette, which I don't want, but I can control it. It's a 65% right now. I'm just going to bring that down to 0. I don't want it. Okay, and of course, this is too much effect, so I'm going to tone it down, and I'm going to go to 60%. There we go. Okay, now it seems like we lost a little bit of contrast or punch again. So what I'm going to do is click on the levels and curves, and I'm just going to add a touch of that again. Push the Shift key, and I'm going to bring this down a little bit, just so I can get those blacks. See, it was looking a little purple on the suit. This will control that. So I'm going to bring it down just a tad. Good, but I don't want it on the face. So I'm going to click on a control point. Then I'm going to copy that control point to the bride's face. And that's it. So that's the levels and curves. And then the last one, or not the last one, but almost the last one, is the dark detail extractor. So I'm going to add the detail extractor right there. Let's see here. Shift. Okay. Now you can see the structure of the bridge. See, look, without it, it looks fuzzy. There's nothing there. And with it, you really add to it. So I'm gonna get rid of this effect on the people. And because this is important, I will go to the masks and make sure that I'm working on the couple. For that control point, I'll tone it down to just his face because I don't want it to touch the bridge, which is above their head. Very nice. So yeah, you can see that structure looks pretty cool. They look pretty cool. They have that film look to it. It's kind of nostalgic or vintagey feel to it. And the only problem now is that these guys are almost as bright. They're almost as bright as the bridge, and I don't want that. I want them to have an emphasis on them. So I'm going to go to one that's very popular for me in my workflow, which is darken and lighten center, which is right here. So I'm going to push the Shift key again. Okay. You have two options here. You have the square and the more of a stretched out oval circle. I'm going to stay on the square. And here's the important guy, the place center. So the image needs to know, I mean, Nik Filters needs to know what part of the image you want to brighten and which part of the image you want to darken. And this is actually a lot different than adding a vignette in Photoshop. This is a much more sophisticated way to add brightness and draw your eye to the bride and groom or to your portrait or whatever you're photographing without making it look like a vignette, which in my opinion looks a little bit cheesy. So I'm going to use the place center. I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to click right in the middle of their faces. Okay, now you can kind of see, you may not be able to see what happened there, but you can see here what's going on. You can see how it affects everything except for that area. Make it brighter or make it darker. So obviously I want to make the bridge a little darker. So I'm going to go to -65. But I want to make them, if you want to, I can make them darker here. This is affecting only the center point, or brighter. So obviously I want to just do a little bit here, something about there. So I'm going to go to about 40%. And on the border, which is everything else except for the couple, I may tone it down to maybe 70. Okay. Take a look at this image now. You can see that the difference between using darken and lighten center filter and using a vignette. The vignette, you can really detect it quickly. This guy just draws your eye to the bride and groom, which is beautiful. I love it. So comparing the image, this is the original. This is the final. This is the original. This is the final. Okay. Now remember what I said before. Because I do have some greenery here, I could do an old photo filter, go to number 3, and get rid of some of those very saturated green tones. And I can do that now. I won't do it because of time, but just to kind of remind you of what that looks like. So again, this is the original, which looks kind of flat. And this is the final, which looks like a little work of art. And it doesn't even really look photoshopped, which is the beautiful part about it. Okay, let's see here. Let me cancel this now. Go to one that's not used very much. I just shot this wedding this weekend, so I'm gonna show you how I would use this. Now I use Nik filter so much that when I'm shooting a photograph, I already know what filter I'm going to apply to it. So sometimes I actually take photos that will purposely look great on certain Nik filters. Like this one, for example. This is my bride I shot in Palos Verdes, which is a beautiful part of LA. And I shot it through the hotel's curtain, and I put the curtain over my lens to get this kind of soft skin, soft feel. This is not Photoshop. This is straight out of my camera. You can see because it says CR2 there. This is the original image out of my camera. And what I like to do is I'm going to do something a little crazy to this image. I'm going to add an infrared filter, a color infrared filter to this. So I'm going to leave this alone. I'm not going to make any changes here. I'm going to open the image in Photoshop. And you'll see why I love this filter. It's one of those filters that you think you wouldn't use, and then here they are. So here's something important. In an image like this, the skin tones are already starting to wash out, or they're in danger of washing out. You don't want that. So you want to be very careful on what filters you apply to this. You need to kind of know and experiment with these kinds of looks. So I'm going to click on Color Efex Pro 4 here. And just as an example, I'm going to go to the contrast filter that I used before, and I'm going to show you why this would be a mistake on this case. See, there you go. It totally washes it out. See, look at the skin. I lose part of her cheek. That's just too much. Okay, so I'm not going to use contrast, any kind of contrast filter. So I'm going to click X on that. So I can go back to the original. What I will use is a crazy filter called infrared film. I'm going to click on that guy right there. And now you say, well, that's really washed out. Well, it's true, but we're not using that one. I'm going to go to number 1, with that one right there. You can see all these other options. I'm choosing number 1 because of the way the eyes and the lips and the earring looks on this one. You can see how this one washes them out. So I'm going to go to number 1. You have to kind of play with it a little bit. But now she looks like she's on fire, so we're going to go to the control points. We're going to go to the opacity. And I'm going to bring it down almost all the way to 20%. Okay? Now you can see how beautiful that looks. That just really looks nice. Now, because I want to show the viewer of my image a little bit of those earrings, a little bit of the lips and the eyes and the eyebrow, I have to use another Nik filter called Tonal Contrast. So if I ever want to bring detail out, I can either use one of the contrast ones, or I can use Tonal Contrast. I'll use Tonal Contrast in this case. I'm going to push the Shift key. Okay, now you can see why I use Tonal Contrast. Take a look at before. Now take a look after. Before, you don't see anything. It looks pretty washed out. After. Okay, now let's control this Tonal Contrast. The highlights, see, I don't want it to look waxy, so if you protect the highlights, you're going to go it's going to go too far trying to protect those highlights. I want to keep it, so I'm going to keep it at 25% to give it just a little more contrast on the eyes and stuff. The shadows I'm going to leave alone, because if you bring them up, it just doesn't really do much. I'm just going to leave it at 0. Okay, now there's these other options. There's like 4 or 5 of these contrast types. I either stay on standard or I go to fine. Let me show you what that looks like. See, there's high pass, fine, balanced, and strong. Strong is obviously not a good choice for this picture. Fine is usually the one I stick with fine quite a bit. In this case, I'm going to stick with standard because it gives me the right balance between her skin tones and the hair. Click on that. Then I'm going to click OK. Actually, I won't click OK. Let me show you the original. Let me show you the final. Okay, and let me click OK here. So there it is. There's my final image. If I was doing this for competition, this would be pretty much the way I would compete with it. And you can see what a difference it makes before and after. You can really see those details come alive. Lori, Brenda, do I have time for one more, or should I take questions now?
It's up to you, Roberto. Whatever you want to do. We have a couple questions here, but if you want to show one more picture, that's fine.
Let me show one how do I use my black and whites on Nik filters. Obviously, there is Silver Efex Pro, which is that software that specializes in black and whites, but I'm going to focus on Color Efex Pro 4. So I'm going to go ahead and open this guy up. I'm going to do this kind of quickly. Okay, let's see here. I'm going to go to, I'm going to open this guy up. I'm going to do this a little bit fast so we can get to some questions. Okay, in Color Efex Pro 4, you have the black and white conversion filter, which is at the very top here. I'm going to click on that right away. Of course, in this drop down menu, you have tonal enhancer, or you have the dynamic contrast, which is a little strong. It's almost like an infrared feel. I'm going to stick with just a black and white conversion. One of the things I really like about this is that it tones down the sky. You see, without it, it's pitch white, pretty much. With it, tones it down a little bit. Okay, I'm going to start making some adjustments here. The filter color, I want to bring brighter skin tones to the couple. So I'm going to go to 38. Good. On the strength of the filter, I'm going to bring it up to about 80. The brightness, I want it a little brighter on their face. I'm going to go to 25. The contrast is pretty good there, 30. The shadows, I'm going to tone down to 25. And the highlights, I'm actually going to bring it to 0 because I want to get that dynamic feel to the photograph. Let's see here, maybe a little less, maybe 15. Okay. Click OK here. Okay. Now, one thing this is why I like to work on Photoshop. So you can see that the sky is a little bit gray. It's not quite white, but I don't want it pure white either. But I don't want it I don't want the color of the tonality of the sky to match the tonality of the skin tone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to merge these two layers here by pushing Shift Command E. That will merge these layers. Then I'm going to multiply the layer or duplicate it by pushing Command J. And now I'm going to push Shift Command L to do an auto level. This is the shortcut for the Macs. It's Shift Command L. And you can see it does auto levels. Now auto levels brings my sky to pure white, which is not what I want. But it did make my photo more dynamic. So I'm going to tone it down to about 50%. Actually, yeah, 45%. And then I'm going to merge these guys again, Shift Command E. But before I do that, look at the difference. Shift Command E, and there's my final image. Of course, maybe you want to brighten these guys up. And you know how to do that with darken and lighten center. So let's see, do we have any questions so far? Let's go ahead and ask questions, Lori, if you want.
Okay, I'll ask a few, and then Brenda can probably pop in and ask a few as well. Let's see here. Jasmine was wondering, how many photos do you edit in a wedding generally?
Okay, that's an interesting question. I don't edit. Okay, that's a very good question actually. The first thing I do through a wedding is my color checker passport basically will calibrate and give me that consistency of color tone from the very. That's the first thing I do through a wedding. Is I first select the photos. Maybe, let's say I select 500. I only shoot about 1,000 photos per wedding, and about 50% of them are the ones I'm going to give to my clients. So I have 500. I use my color checker passport first to synchronize, to keep everything consistent throughout my color tones. And I also straighten the photographs. It's already been white balance and color corrected, so I don't have to worry about that. And then I also straighten the photographs. Like let's say my image looks crowded, like looks crooked. I would just use the straightening tool in Adobe Raw or in Photoshop to make it straight. So that's the first thing I would do. After that, I put them in Pictage or whatever company you choose to use. Then I choose the photos for the wedding album. Those wedding album photographs are the ones that I use. That's where Nik Filters really comes in, because pretty much every photo that I show a client on their wedding album is going to have some sort of Nik filter applied to it. I don't apply much to reception, but I do apply some filters to the reception, and I just do it in a batch. I don't sit there one image at a time for the reception photos, of course not. I create a filter recipe, and then I create an action using that recipe, and then I do a batch. So then I just go out to eat or whatever, and this is all being done in the background, and the reception is ready to go. For the bride and groom portraits, the ones that are going to shine, the ones that people are going to really spend time looking, the ones that are going to be people are going to be buying for their houses as decor, those I applied what I did today. I applied all those Nik filters, those recipes, those combinations to really make the photographs stand out. Okay, any other question? Let's answer another question, Lori.
Do one more here. Tina was asking, when do you use tonal contrast versus pro contrast?
Well, they're two different ones. Pro contrast corrects color balance a little bit. It gives you if you have like a red or an orange color cast on the photograph, like at the reception per se, or if you have a low light lens, sometimes low light lens. I'm sorry. If you do not have a low light lens, like a 2.8 or faster, sometimes those lenses give you a red color cast for some reason. If you do have a red color cast or an orangey warm color cast, pro contrast will probably get rid of it. That's probably the best thing to do to clean up the image. If you didn't clean it up from the beginning using the color checker, then you can do it that way. But if you do it through through pro contrast, it's going to take you a while. The tonal contrast one, that's to bring out detail. So if I have a portrait of a bride and it's a very close-up portrait, the tonal contrast will bring detail in the hair, the eyes, the eyebrows, and the lips, and then the other parts will not be affected. So, okay, that's that.
Okay.
Any other questions, Lori, at all? Or anybody has any questions, they can go ahead and ask away.
Let's see. Let's do one more here, and then we'll go ahead and let you go. Let's see here. There's a question by Helen who was wondering who you use for your photo albums. Do you have
I've been using the same company forever, and it's Graphic Studio. The Graphic Studio has come out recently with a really nice array of colored, of paper types that go with my brand. My brand is very elegant. I don't go for trendy or anything like that. I go for very elegant, very sophisticated, elegant feel to the photographs. And Graphic Studio has made some papers that are not shiny. They're not too shiny, so that's too trendy for me. They're not too matte, flat, boring. They're kind of like they have like a satin lamination over the photograph, and that looks really quite nice. So I use Graphic Studio for that, for my wedding albums. And I also wanted to tell everybody out there, if they're interested in learning more about just photography, the workflow, everything, just how to shoot, how to train your eye. I know Lori mentioned it. but I did write a book called Picture Perfect Practice. You can buy in Amazon.com. You can buy it at peachpit.com. You can buy it at your local bookstore anywhere in the country, in Barnes & Noble. You can even buy it in the UK. It's being sold in the UK, and any bookstore would do. So the book is basically shows you how to train your eye to break down locations and be able to find their photographic potential. So you're not looking around like a crazy person at a location looking for a good spot to photograph your couple. This book teaches you how to narrow down your vision and focus on what's the best part of this location to use. The second part of the book talks about the whole science of posing, and I on purpose put photos that I did not like how I posed, and I explained why not and why I did not like those poses, and then it explains to you step by step how to fix those poses so they look flawless, natural, and candid. And then the third part of the book is how to practice everything and put it all together on Monday through Friday so you can perform very well on a wedding day. So that's Picture Perfect Practice, and you can buy it at your local Barnes & Noble or at Amazon.com.
Hey, Laurie, this is Brenda. I just want to thank you again for co-sponsoring this webinar. And Roberto, thank you so much for coming and doing this. We've gotten a lot of good feedback on the questions panel, and we just really appreciate you doing this.
No, thank you so much. And everybody, thank you so much for continuing to want to learn and continue to progress. And like I said to everybody, always, we want to make this industry better and better, and we need to educate ourselves as much as we can. So I appreciate all of you for your time, and let me know if you enjoyed the webinar. Thank you so much to X-Rite and to Nick Filters for the invite.
Great. Okay. Thanks, everyone, and thanks for joining us. Have a good day. Bye-bye.